Undoubtedly, Microsoft Internet Explorer has caused headaches for many a web developer, and it certainly caused me many a late night trying to get a layout looking right in IE6 or IE7. It's also important to recognize the massive contribution that Internet Explorer has had in web development in terms of XHR requests, advances in CSS, in web page processing, and so on. Now, earlier versions of Internet Explorer probably weren't so great at implementing standards, and there were various issues in this. But at the time, Internet Explorer really was quite a decent browser. Unfortunately, things probably didn't move on as quick as they should have done. And it was probably until around about version 9 of Internet Explorer that Internet Explorer could really be considered a very good browser. From 9 onwards, its standard support is really quite good. Microsoft actively engaged with various standard bodies. They contributed various tests, and the browser performed very well in standards tests. So it must be somewhat quite frustrating and for the team in order to still be stuck with this type of sort of content and the browser not being very well respected. I think the other thing that drove this is the development tools really weren't up to scratch when compared to other browsers such as Chrome and Firefox. And this sort of led the development community, including myself. I would much rather use Chrome's development tools than Internet Explorer's because they're simply much better. Is this still the case? Well, I'm going to take you through some of the improvements, and you can make up your own mind on that question. So despite many marketing campaigns and attempts to go and move this onwards, I don't think Microsoft are really successful in being able to drop some of these images and some of these issues that people have experienced previously. The next major motivator I want to talk about is changing browser use cases. Go back 10 years or so, and probably the only place you would use a browser was on your desktop computer. This is no longer the case. We all obviously own tablets, phones, maybe you own a watch-based device, maybe a HoloLens, all these sort of things. Maybe there's a browser on your console, your TV. It's no longer just the case that we just use a browser on a desktop computer. That's really not accurate anymore. So Microsoft wanted to design a browser that would work in all these different scenarios and present a really good experience across them. So right from the ground up, a lot of attention was paid to making pages render well and perform well in various resolutions and form factors. And Edge is built on something called the Universal Application Platform Framework. And in some degree, it will run across various different Microsoft devices built on this platform. So the same core engine will be used as on Windows, as on Windows Phone, Xbox, and other future devices such as HoloLens. But by far, I think the biggest motivator was about addressing technical debt. Most software projects begin very neat and tidy and with the best of intentions, and we can only assume that Internet Explorer was the same. But it very quickly, over time, things sort of devolve into some sort of twisted jungle, which becomes increasingly hard to maintain. And then maybe there's even tigers that will come and bite you when you make various changes. Internet Explorer, in one form or another, has been around over 20 years. You can only imagine what a 20-year-old application would be like to maintain. And unfortunately, one of the biggest issues with maintaining this type of thing is it's very hard to implement changes and go and improve things. And this can really slow down development. Internet Explorer also supports various legacy technologies, things that just aren't used anymore. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this later. But when was the last time you included an ActiveX component on your page? Or when you use something called web slices or web accelerators? These things, they're not really used very much anymore, but there's still support for them in the Internet Explorer code base. And this is still something that needs to be tested and maintained, and also bloats the application code base. The next thing I want to talk about is something called the Wild Wild Web. The web is a somewhat unusual landscape in order to develop and run your applications and sites. And on the whole, I think the web is really pretty forgiving. If I was to write some code that's quite similar to some of the HTML you'll find on various pages on the web, it just wouldn't run. The compiler would throw a fit. Whereas the web, I can miss out various tags, I can not close tags, I can misspell elements, attributes, and browsers will still do a pretty good job on the whole of rendering a usable web page. Maintaining a usable web page and all the code required to process these different types of scenarios is really difficult. And additionally, if we look back to when standards might not be implemented perhaps quite how they should be, developers came to actually rely on various misbehaviors or problems. And unfortunately, if Microsoft were then going to correct these various problems and issues, they would also then break various web pages and applications. This would then cause various devs a further headache saying, hey, my page no longer works properly, when in fact the standards were actually implemented properly. So the initial approach that Microsoft took to address this was using something called document modes. And a document mode is kind of a simulation for how the page will be rendered and processed. And there's quite a number of factors that go into determining what document mode a page should be running in. So for example, the doc type is looked at, various HTTP headers, the security model the page is running in, site-wide settings. It's actually a fairly complex process illustrated by that flowchart in the background. And I just want to jump into just what a document mode effect can have on a page. So here I've got a site I'd like to introduce you for. It's called hatforcat.com. And this is a site which sells hats for your cats. And it allows me to demonstrate various concepts. Now, this is also available online if you want to go and play with any of the stuff I'm going to show you. And it's a great way for me to demo some of these things to you. So when you have Windows 10, as well as Edge as your default browser, you also have access to Internet Explorer 11 for legacy scenarios. And you can access this with this toolbar up here. And I'm going to go and open this page in Internet Explorer here. So that's loaded up there, and I'm going to bring up the developer tools here, and I'm going to go into the emulation section here. Now, you can see in the top left-hand corner here, we've got this document mode here, and this is the document mode the Internet Explorer has decided this page should be rendered on, and it'll probably be because I've got a HTML5 doc type on this one. Now, if I was to go to the console, I'm going to shift this up. So I'm going to have to resize that. It's a fairly small screen here. Oops. Come back. My F12 tools have mysteriously disappeared off the screen, so let me close that. And let's bring them back in and hope they render somewhere sensible, which they don't, which is going to be an issue for that particular demo. Let's close that one there, and we'll try opening that again. And let's bring up the F12 tools. There we go. Now, if I go into the emulation tools here, and I go and change this document mode to a much earlier one, like Internet Explorer 5 here, and now if I'm going to go and close these tools, we start to get a number of issues here. So we have error messages about various APIs that aren't supported, and that's because we're telling the browser we want to go back and look at this page as if Internet Explorer 5 users were viewing and using it. We don't want to debug that. And we'll see that there's various layout issues as well, as we use various CSS rules and effects which aren't supported in this version of the browser. So how does this work? Well, it would be very bulky indeed in terms of a code base if Internet Explorer included every previous version way back to Internet Explorer 5. So what the team do is they have various code paths, and they try and simulate what was available in different versions. So when you change through these document modes, it's a simulation. It's not completely accurate. It's a best guess. But maintaining all of that type of thing is actually quite a lot of work. So I'm going to go back to my presentation then. So document modes is a lot of work, and there's a lot of codes that needs to be maintained, and it again bulks the application. And does anyone really need to be able to simulate what their page looks like in Internet Explorer 5 now? You probably don't. And there are other ways of doing this with virtual machines that you can download from the IE Dev site. There's various other approaches if you do need to maintain that. So what to do? Well, before we answer that question, we need to look at how a browser is actually constructed. A browser isn't just one application. It's an application that's made up of a number of different subsystems. And these all work together to go and retrieve and monitor and render your page. So I've illustrated some of the main ones here, and pretty much every browser will have some sort of set of these types of subsystems. Now, there's some elements of Internet Explorer that work really quite well. There's a really great JavaScript engine, codenamed Chakra. It performs very well on performance tests. Most modern standards are implemented. From a standards and page rendering perspective, Internet Explorer 11, and in fact from 9 onwards, performs really quite well. So what Microsoft did is they looked at what the good stuff was in Internet Explorer, such as the standards support, some other things that were working pretty well, such as a JavaScript engine, and they said, hey, we can actually do something with some of these. We don't need to throw these components away. So they took these components, and then they looked at some other stuff which wasn't working so well. Things like document modes, support for legacy technology such as ActiveX. There's even support for VBScript in there. Who has written a web page in VBScript recently? No one. But it's still in the code base. So they took this, and then they went and dropped this crap out the way. That's gone. No one cares about that, and no one's really going to miss a lot of that. And apparently this commit took over an hour and a half to actually make to the code base. And so you can only imagine how much code was actually removed when that was done. So this essentially means that Edge is a fork of the Internet Explorer code base. So Edge really owes a lot of gratitude to Internet Explorer in that it's built on probably the best bits of it. So when Microsoft were creating Edge, they had 3 goals in mind. First of all, they wanted to be an amazing browser. They don't want to be the browser that you just fire up when you have to sort out some weird rendering issue. They want you to use this browser. And in order to do that, they needed to provide a really good experience. One of the first things you'll notice about using Edge is just how snappier it feels. It's quick. It actually feels really nice, lightweight, easy to use. It works very well with touch-based devices, surfaces, that type of thing. And the other thing Microsoft have done is they've paid a lot of attention to making sure sites render properly in it. They do some quite clever work. It utilizes some of the metrics from Bing, and they look at various problems that can occur on web pages and made sure that Edge was running well with popular sites and applications, even to the level of involving and engaging directly with some vendors where they found issues in larger sites. They wanted Edge to be bold and forward-looking. Traditionally, Internet Explorer has really sort of lagged behind in terms of technology support. And what they wanted was future versions. We want to be implementing the new APIs. We want it to be a modern browser. And lastly, to ship features fast. Traditionally, there have been fairly few releases of Internet Explorer, and partly because how tightly it is integrated with the Windows operating system. This has changed with Edge. Edge is evergreen, and we continually update it. And there's already been a number of different releases with support for new APIs available. So let me take you through what I consider are some of the main features of Edge. So one of the first features you'll notice, obviously the UI is entirely different to Internet Explorer. One of the first features I want to call your attention to is called Web Notes. And you can activate Web Notes with this little toolbar up the top here. And what this basically allows you to do is annotate the web page. So I can click the pen here. I can select something. I don't know. Maybe I'm a designer working on this page, and I say, hey, let's get rid of that. So I could go and cross that out there. I could highlight some text. Oops. I can draw on that there. I can add little messages. One of the things that they've done in previous Edge demos is that they say, hey, how about using this feature when working with sort of non-expert users? And the example they have is someone going to a tax return submission site. It's obviously something that's quite complex. And I don't know, maybe your sister or brother is an accountant. They can go to the web page, they could add some little notes saying, hey, you need to add in this value here and assist you in completing this various form. You have an option to crop bits of the page, so I can go and select this area there. But what do you do when you've gone through and annotated this page? Well, you've got a couple of options. You can save it, and at the moment, you've got a couple of main options. You can save it to OneNote, or something called the reading list, which I'm going to be talking about shortly. Any application that's registered for the Edge Web Notes saving contract will be available here. You also have the ability to share this, so you could share this over mail and again send it to OneNote if you'd prefer. Next feature I want to tell you about is the reading mode. Now, this was actually available in previous versions of Internet Explorer, or the Metro version, or whatever it's called now, the Windows app version. And what this does is it gives you a distraction-free view of a web page. Often pages, particularly Australian media sites, they're kind of cluttered with adverts everywhere. There's a lot of crap that you don't want to see. You just want to read the text content. And it can be kind of an unpleasant experience reading a web page. And one of the things that a lot of people want to do is read textual content on the web. So we have a reading view available. And when the reading view is available, you'll see this book thing up here becomes available. And I can click this, and I get a distraction-free view here. Now, how does it do this? Well, there's a bit of intelligence. Edge will analyze the page. It will work out where the main areas of content are, and then it will go and focus on the text for you. It doesn't always get it right. It's not perfect, but it does work pretty well on all major news sites. What we've got here is cat lorem ipsum, in keeping with the theme of the site. Now, the other thing you can do with a page when you've got it in the reading view mode is you can save it to something called your reading list. So I go into this favorites icon here. I can say, I want to go and save this page here. I'll click add. And what this does is it adds it to our reading list, which is an offline available version of the web page. So I can go and look at this content later if I so wish. Unfortunately, at the moment, this isn't synced between devices, but it does seem an obvious next step to expand this. And I think that would be pretty cool, you know, add an article to reading list, read it on your phone on the way home from work, that type of thing. Now, the next feature I want to talk about is Cortana integration. And I think this really sets Edge apart from other browsers. Now, unfortunately, with Cortana, not all functionality is available currently for the Australian region. If you want to see the full set of functionality that's available, you're going to need to change your machine's region to be US. That obviously has some implications for your operating system and other applications running on it. So if you don't understand what you're doing, do be careful with that. I'm going to show you a video of it because I don't want to change my application's region here. This will demonstrate the main set of features here.
Cortana has a number of integration points in Edge. Let's look at these now. Now let's say we're browsing an article on the New York Times website and we come across a word we're not too sure about. We select the word, we right click, and we can ask Cortana what it knows about it. Let's do that. In this instance, Cortana has defined the word for us. Let's look at another example of Cortana integration. Now, sometimes when browsing the web, you'll come across a site that Cortana knows a bit more about. For example, here, I'm visiting the site scratchbread.com, and I can see there's a link up the top here where it reads, I've got direction, hours, and more. Now, at this point in time, it's a little bit limited, the site supported, and also a little bit random. I found this particular example through an Engadget article. When Cortana does know more about a site, you get this link up here, and we can click this, and it will pull in a heap of information. In this example, it's given us the address of the business, the opening hours, it's pulled in a load of reviews, some photos. It's great functionality, so it'll be really awesome when more sites support this. Edge's address bar is also integrated with Cortana. Let's take a look at this now. This allows us to perform simple math. We can perform conversions, 2.5 kilometers to miles. And you can see Cortana bringing us the answer back to these queries without ever having to leave the web page. We can look at the current weather. We can see flight status. We can look up stock quote symbols, expect to see this functionality grow even more in the future. I think the Cortana integration really sets Edge apart. There's not another browser that currently supports this type of functionality.
So the Cortana functionality, it's pretty awesome in terms of what's available. And we can only expect this to increase for the Australian market. So in summary, with the end user features, I think the main things that distinguish Edge, the web notes and sharing, we've got the reading, viewing list, Cortana integration, and it's obviously not unique, but it's a big deal that Edge will now automatically update. So there's really only one sort of living version of Edge now. Next up, let's talk about the F12 or dev tooling. I think this is an area that traditionally hasn't worked so well in Internet Explorer and has frustrated many a dev. It's very much improved in Edge. Now, one thing I will say is it maybe has some stability issues, particularly some of the performance and memory tools. So it's really quite likely that even in this short presentation, I'm going to be able to crash this looking at some of this. However, let us continue. So one thing you'll notice is the tools have been redesigned here. Let's get that web page back. And we have a nicer interface to it here. Now, it should also be familiar to any of you that have used any other browser dev tooling here. And that's entirely deliberate because you don't want to have to learn a whole new layout for tools when you shift from one browser to another. Microsoft are aware that developers have to make sure sites work in different browsers and that support is available. So on the whole, these tools will work very similar to what they do in other competitors such as Chrome and Firefox. And I think that's a good thing. But there is also a number of things that I think distinguish Edge's tools. So as you can see, that's actually locked it up, bringing it up and down there. So let's... and we're not allowed to close out of that either, which is awesome. And let's bring our tools up again. Now you can bring up these tools a number of different ways. I can bring them up with the F12 key. I can bring them up from the menu here. I can right-click on an element and select Inspect. Now working across, we have the DOM Explorer here, which gives us obviously a view of the page's DOM model. And one of the major advances here is this is now live. You no longer have to go and refresh this when there's changes made to the page. That alone is a massive step forwards for this. We can navigate the DOM with the arrow keys here, up, down, left and right to go and expand various nodes. In the find here, I can either search by keyword, or it will also support various DOM selection attributes. So if we try basket contents, for example, you can see that will then use the ID selector there in order to go and pull out this node. So that can be quite useful for navigating various nodes here. I'm going to inspect a particular element here, which is this link here. So I'm going to right click and go inspect element. You can see that this jumps to this element here. Now if I look over on the right here, we'll try and zoom in there. You might notice something different here. This is a less style sheet here. So Edge now supports compiled CSS and JavaScript files with source maps, so it can map back through to them. So I've declared these style sheet rules here in a less file. I can click this. Let's come out of the zoom. And you can see we've got the original less file showing the contents here. If I want to see what the compiled CSS is, I can click this button in the right here. This will change over and show me what it was in raw CSS. If I make various changes to the page, so maybe we lose that lovely pink color there and change it to another color, you can see over in the right here, we have this little orange bar that's appeared here. This indicates I've made a change to this particular style rule. I can go and remove various elements. Maybe we'll go and remove this border bottom property here. And if I want to see a summary of all the different changes that I've made to this, I can go over to this changes node here, and it'll show me the changes I've made, with deletions indicated with a red background and a green background indicating new items here. Now we can copy all of this and we could then put it into the style sheet if we wanted to, or we could go and revert the item. The other new feature is this color wheel here, and now this shows all the different colors that are utilized on this web page here. And we can see the RGBA value here. We can play with the hue, saturation, lightness, alpha values. Now, one thing that isn't so useful is you don't seem to be able to actually do anything with this. So you would have to copy this value out here. I guess it would have been kind of nice to have some kind of eyedropper tool in order to apply this, but maybe that's coming in a future release. If we go into the console window here, this now supports a heap of new console APIs. You can see one of the things that's happening here is there's a little count that's incrementing in there. There's an API called console.count, which is displaying that. There's all the standard console.warn, info, debugging, that type of thing. It also supports the shorthand selection thing, so I can do $0 for the last element that I selected. And there's a number of different shortcuts which are now supported in this window. Let's go into the debugger and let's close some of this stuff. Now, one of the things I'm going to show you is that we've got a couple of new abilities here. If I go to this breakpoints window here, we have the ability to set breakpoints on XHR requests. We can set something called trace points, which I'm going to go back to, and we can also set event breakpoints. Now, I'm going to bring up all the scripts there, and I'm going to tell Edge I'm interested in breaking whenever there's a mouse click event here. I'm going to add this breakpoint here, and I'm going to go and click my item here, and you can see that Edge went and broke into the jQuery source code here, which is how I've defined a click event binding here. Now, that's not too useful on the whole. I guess most of us are going to assume that jQuery is doing its business, and we rarely need to debug into jQuery's source. So I'm going to let that go through. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Edge I'm not interested in debugging jQuery. So I'm going to select the script here, and I'm going to click Mark as Library Code, because I don't want to see what's going on with this thing here. And then the other thing I need to check is enabled is this option up here to debug just my code. And now when I go and click on this item here, you can see instead of going into the jQuery event binding code, we're taken into the actual script, which we're interested in rather than the library code. So I think that's a really cool feature there. The other thing that's supported here is compiled JavaScript. So if you're going from CoffeeScript, TypeScript, that type of thing, that's now supported in the debugger through source maps. TypeScript also has another interesting feature which is unique to Edge, in that it contains some refactoring support. So you'll notice I'm in the TypeScript file at the moment, and somewhat unintuitively, I actually need to change over to the JavaScript file in order for this to work. But this is to do with how the file is compiled and how Edge's debugger can map back to what's going on. I can right-click here, and I can find all references to this particular class or function. I can go to the definition of it. So we have basic refactoring support for TypeScript files here, which is pretty nice. There's been a lot of work done on the call stack for AJAX requests. It will now display them in a sort of human intuitive way. It's quite hard to understand async programming sometimes what's actually going on, so Edge will do a good job of trying to create a sort of timeline of events for you. With breakpoints, we have something called trace points. These are like a combined console.log and breakpoint. So if I add a trace point on the mouse click event, I can put the mouse was clicked. We'll add that trace point there, and I'll go and click this here, and hopefully in our console window, come back here, you can see we now have this message, the mouse was now clicked. So that can be useful for just instrumenting some of your code without actually modifying some of the source. The debugger just feels so much nicer to use than Internet Explorer. It feels as good as Chrome's debugger, so it is much better for debugging your scripts there. The network tool has probably undergone the biggest sort of aesthetic improvements and enhancements. We have a much nicer view here. It's now on by default. Various types of content also have different visualizers. So you can see I'm looking at a CSS file here, and we get color coding, syntax highlighting. If I went to, let's reload the page. And as it's reloading, if I look at, say, an image, we get some information about the image. So Edge contains a number of different visualizers which will show you further details about whatever type of content it is that's viewable. You've also got various different options here for filtering out various different types of content as well. There's been some changes in the areas of performance and memory. Now, I'm going to go into a section of the site called Kittens, and you can see there's another, it's actually got upset there, so let's close that. And we've still got the whirling cursor there. We'll be closing that one down again. We're not allowed to close that. And I'm going to go into the Kittens section of my site. Now, I'll be honest with you, I ran out of ideas for demonstrating performance on some kind of online shopping-based site, so I didn't bother in this instance. So what I have here is I have two buttons. One will create a spinning kitten image, and another will create lines of spinning kittens. So, for example, I can click this, and I have my rotating kitten head. If I click Create Kitten Line, we can do that a few times, and then it's sort of oddly hypnotic and slightly disturbing. So, why is this important? Well, let me refresh the page here. I'm going to bring up the F12 tools, and I'm going to go into the performance section here. I'm going to kick off the performance trace here, and I'm going to click the Create Kitten button and come back to this, and I'm going to stop my performance trace. Edge will then analyze what's gone on here, and the first thing I want to show you is this little orange triangle here. Now, this is something I've added using the console APIs. I've told it I want to mark this point in time, and you can pass it a description here. So if you're diagnosing performance issues, it's useful to know in relation to the timeline what was actually happening at that. So that would be my first bit of advice when you're working with this. Now, in the performance area here, I can see a lot of information here. So I can see the CPU utilization in terms of percentage. I can see the throughput in terms of frames per second. I can select portions on the timeline here. And it's just off the screen, oops, because it's a little bit small here. Let me try and bring it up. Then we get a donut here, which is sort of showing the breakdown of various types of events. And we can really drill down into a lot of detail. And if you're working with some complex animations or games, there's a lot of useful information here where you can see how your page is actually slowing down. Now, the other thing I want to show you is to do with some of the performance profiling here. So I'm going to open up some specific demos. And they're cut down. I don't want a lot of other stuff going on the page because it's easier to demonstrate some of these concepts here. The first one I want to show you is the slow and fast functions here. So I'm going to open this up in Edge. Let's close that. And I have a very simple page here. Now, when I click this Run Functions button here, it kicks off two functions. One has a loop which takes much longer than the other to run. This is obviously somewhat contrived, but it allows me to easily demonstrate how you might use some of these tools. So we'll bring up our tools and just bring that down a bit. I'm going to tell it to profile the session, and I'll click the Run Functions, come back to this, that's done, and I'm going to stop this. Edge will go and analyze what's going on there, and I'm going to go onto this JavaScript call stacks view there, and I can see that there's two functions called here, and unsurprisingly, the slow function used a lot more of the CPU time than the fast function here. This is obviously somewhat contrived, but it's quite a quick way of identifying where the machine's actually, where it's doing the most work within your applications. We get a breakdown for inclusive and exclusive. We have the time or the workload that the function just itself performed, and also the function and any other functions that that function called. Let's come out of that. The next area I want to show you is to do with memory profile traces. So I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to click on Create Memory Leak. Now, it's not really a true memory leak, but it will allow me to show you a profile of what you might see on a memory leak. So when I click this button, it basically creates a load of objects with data attached to them that will stick around. I'll click Create, actually let's refresh that. So whenever you're doing any memory work, what you should really do before you try and find out what event it is causing the memory leak is take a baseline dump of what's going on in memory. So I'm going to click here to go and take a snapshot of the heap there. And that tells Edge's garbage collector to run and to take a snapshot of what's in memory. And you can see we've got a load of information here. We get a little thumbnail of it. We can see how many objects there are. And we get a graph of the total memory usage here. Let's go and click Create Fake Leak again there. Let's take another snapshot. And you can see this profile. We get this kind of sawtooth profile. There's a slight dip there as the garbage collector kicks in and cleans up some of the objects. But overall, we can see that this usage is increasing here. So I'll click that again. And you can see, yet again, it climbs slightly higher. And if you ever see a profile like this, your application is very likely leaking. But what do you do when you actually discover all this? Well, Edge gives you a couple of options. So I can compare snapshots. So I can right-click on this, and I can say, I want to compare this snapshot to snapshot 1 or snapshot 3. So maybe we compare this snapshot 3. We look at various objects that were present in one snapshot and not in others. We look at the number of objects, that type of thing. So let's have a look. And we can quite quickly, hopefully, based on the count, see, hey, something funny is going on with this some value here. Maybe we look into our code as to where that value is and what might be causing it. Another situation that Edge can help with memory-wise is that of disconnected DOM nodes. Now, disconnected DOM nodes are a type of memory leak within Edge. If you've got a DOM node that exists in memory, but it's not on the page, that means it can't be garbage collected for some reason. And that's a problem, because that's actually using up some memory within your page. So I'm going to click Create Disconnected DOM Nodes there. Bring up the tools. And come back. We'll expand this. We'll take a heap snapshot there. And you can see down here we have this little information sign here. And Edge will actually tell us, hey, there's an issue in this memory. There's something that isn't quite right. You might want to take a look at this further. So I can click this there. And you can see next to this div element there, it says, hey, an object of this type is not attached to the DOM. So Edge can help you debug these type of issues by quite quickly pinpointing where these are occurring. The final demo I want to show you to do with the memory stuff is circular references. Now, this used to be a really huge issue with earlier versions of Internet Explorer, and it caused probably the majority of memory leaks. But the browser garbage collectors and the approach taken is a bit cleverer than it was in the past. So this is no longer such an issue, but it can certainly keep stuff around in memory still. So I'm going to click Create Circular Ref here, and we'll go to our memory. We'll start that up, and we'll take a snapshot. Now, I'm not quite sure why this doesn't warrant a little information sign, and it is a little bit hard to go and see at the moment. So I need to go into the root section, which gives us a view of it from kind of like something similar to the page DOM model, a hierarchical option. I know that I've created a circular reference on this thing called myobj here with my property. And in the most subtle issue identification ever, we have a little asterisk at the end of my property there saying this reference is circular. Now, it's pretty clever that it can identify this. Why on earth they couldn't come up with something better than that, because that's really tricky to actually go and spot that type of issue, I have no idea. hopefully that will improve in the future. Now, other areas of interest with the tools, we have an emulation section. This allows us to simulate different user agents, strings. It comes inbuilt with major browsers and devices. We can create our own ones. We can simulate different GPS stuff if you're working with different geolocation here. We can change the orientation of the screen, resolution, and that type of thing. The final tab I'm going to show you is the Experiments tab. So I'm going to go back to my site here. We'll leave our rotating kitten friend there, and we'll go into one of the hats. And we decided we might want to purchase a black bowler hat for our cat here. Now, I'm going to bring up F12 Tools. One of the really annoying things about the tools is that you can't currently dock it. Hopefully that's coming soon, because I just find I want to be able to dock it down the bottom of the screen all the time. Now, the Experiments tab is where Microsoft will be releasing experimental features. These are features which aren't stable. They're things that might not appear in the end version. But if you want to play around with some of these, then you can by going to this tab. Currently, there's the Edit JavaScript feature enabled. Now, when you turn it on, you'll also need to restart your browser. So what this enables us to do is I'm going to go into the debugger section, and I'm going to go into a bit of JavaScript here, which adds the product to the basket. Now, I'll admit this is a little bit hit and miss whether this works properly, but we'll see if this is going to work. So I'm just going to add a simple alert here. Hello, Ignite. And we'll close that there. And the last thing we need to do, because we've got our little tiny asterisk in the corner there, which is really hard to see, is go and save the changes that we've made there. So I can click Save there. Now, when I click this Add to the Basket button, you can see it then reflects the changes. So that's quite a cool way of playing around with JavaScript without having to save the file. Now, it hasn't actually changed the JavaScript file. It's just changed it in the browser that I'm using there. I'm going to close that. Just going to come back to my demos here. The other thing I want to show you is something called the F12 Chooser. Now, what this enables you to do is connect to any Edge process and use the F12 tools to debug it. Now, you might have some kind of hosted web page in your application or development that you want to play with. You'll see if you have Skype running that Skype utilizes this, and you can, I think it's for some kind of advertising in the Skype window, and you can actually go and use this tool to connect to the process and go and debug it directly. The F12 Chooser shortcut, it lives in a somewhat strange place of System32, F12, F12 Chooser, and Microsoft don't make a big deal of this, so it's worth taking note of if that's of interest to you. Edge also has a section like some of the other browsers, I think it's About Config, where you can go and tweak various different settings and stuff here. So you have options here about enabling various properties and stuff that you can play with in this section. So that's been a sort of lightning whirlthrough of the F12 tools. Now, there's a guy called Andy Sterland who is on the Edge F12 team, and he spoke at a conference, and he said, this is really about setting a baseline for Edge's F12 developer tools. We're going to try and get them as good as other browsers, and from then on, it's full steam ahead with enhancements and stuff. I think many developers, probably including myself, see probably Chrome as sort of dominating in this area when it comes to innovation, but I think this is going to change, and I think there's some really cool features coming up. They demonstrate time travel debugging, the ability to rewind some of the debugging stack. There's a lot of cool features coming up. We looked at the Revamped Network tool. It's got a much nicer GUI and visualizer for various things here. We now have source map support, and we have TypeScript refactoring support, which is unique to Edge. So, Edge gotchas. There's not too many of them, but there is some which are going to catch a few people out. And it's mainly around technology that's been deprecated. I don't think document modes will necessarily, it could well break some applications actually. Document modes is now gone. Edge just has one living document mode that's in use. So if you've got a very old site, you're going to need to check that it still works properly in Edge. Things like meta tags to trigger document modes, they don't work in Edge. ActiveX support is dropped. This is probably really going to hurt a few enterprises that are relying on various ActiveX controls. It tended to be used for things that you couldn't do in the website probably about 10 years ago. So things like graphics, graphical rendering and effects. This just wasn't possible. But we now have so many different options available to us, such as Canvas, SVG, WebGL. There's a heap of different options available for doing these type of things. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in order to maintain support. And ActiveX also had a number of security issues. It really only worked on Windows platform. So I'm quite glad to see support for that dropped. The extension model in Edge will be changing. And as part of that, support for extensions such as browser helper objects, accelerators, and web slices. I don't think anyone actually really used accelerators and web slices. And browser helper objects tended to be used to create horrible advertisement toolbars and things that would send you off to various shopping sites and stuff. So I'm not sure if that's such a loss. But there will be a single unified extension model coming. I don't know what that is. I haven't seen it. I wonder if it will be like the Chrome model, which is based on HTML and JavaScript, rather than these horrible COM assemblies and things like that. We'll have to wait and see, but it is coming. And lack of extension support, I think at the moment is actually quite harming Edge's uptake. I rely quite heavily on Password Manager. I can't use this in Edge, which means I can't log into my various favorite sites. And so at the moment, that's one of the main things that's preventing me from using Edge as a default browser. So I really hope that that's addressed pretty quickly. Some APIs have been removed. The attach event, remove event was a IE only thing that's been dropped. We have the standards version now. The MS prefix has been dropped off a number of things. Now you're going to need to check which ones, because Microsoft did some analysis. They dropped it off some where it had become kind of a used standard, and then others they left it on. User agent strings. Now, hopefully, this isn't going to cause many people too many issues, but the user agent string has changed. So this is a user agent string on Internet Explorer 11 on Windows 8. It's fairly short. We've got Trident in there, sort of code name of the rendering engine components. And this is the user agent string for Edge on Windows 10. And there's a heap of things in here. We've got a mention of pretty much every rendering engine there. And I think just as a kind of interesting side note, Mozilla 5 now appears in on every every browser user agent. But why have they done this? Well, as some of you are probably aware, this is to do with a practice called browser sniffing. People will write some code and they'll look at they'll try and work out what browser it is, and it was normally a check if it was some version of IE 6 or 7. And if it was, they wouldn't use some of the newer features that are available. Now, this can work actually quite well, like initially. IE 6 user comes along, it checks, is this Internet Explorer? It is, so we're going to give these guys the reduced experience, and other sites, browsers which do support whatever feature it is that they're working with can get the better experience. But the problem comes when, say, a new version comes along, like IE 9, and it says, hey, is this Internet Explorer 6? It is. Okay, let's go and send them off to the reduced experience. So even though the browser supports whatever functionality it is, they're still getting this old crappy experience when they really don't have to. So what Microsoft are attempting to do with that rather long user agent string is try and camouflage the browser. And I think that's okay, because as long as the site works, you know, who cares? And you'll hopefully get a better experience with it. Of course, this is not the best approach to be designing and developing websites. And instead of browser sniffing code, you should really be using feature detection. Check if the feature exists. There's a number of different approaches to it. You could maybe In this instance, we're checking whether WebGL functionality is enabled. If so, then go and perform it accordingly. However, there is a heap of edge cases around this, and browsers tend to report things slightly differently, so you're probably much better off using some sort of library like Modernizer, which will abstract all these horrible niche edge cases for you. New technology support. Initially, I thought with my demos, I'm going to go and dive into a heap of new technologies, show you all the new features. But then one of the things we have to do as presenters is actually submit our slides a couple of weeks before the demos, in order that they can go and be approved, and I guess check that there's no horrendous content in there that's going to show you guys. Now, this list is already out of date because Edge is automatically updating all the time. Anything I'm going to tell you here is almost certainly out of date. So I'm going to highlight the main features, which I think the majority of people might want to use, but there is a heap more than this. We have new ECMAScript functionality around arrow functions, which are a bit like lambdas for C# guys. We have promises inbuilt into the language, something called REST parameters. We have source edit and picture support, which is about adjusting the image for different devices and form factors. Object-RTC support. Object-RTC is the next version of WebRTC. We have support for web audio and something called ASM.js, which you've probably seen enable in various sort of games and graphical scenarios. It's a very sort of fast subset of JavaScript. So, in conclusion, Edge is the browser going for Windows going forwards. Internet Explorer 11 is, however, present on machines. And if you do come across a site which doesn't work so well in Edge, you have a couple of options. Now, there's two lists. There's one maintained by Microsoft, and there's one that can be maintained at a local network level. So Microsoft maintain a list of sites with compatibility issues, and if you hit one of these sites, so for example, I know that at this time the site WebEx will trigger this, you'll see a little sort of dialogue pop up saying, hey, this site doesn't work so well in Edge. Do you want to open it in Internet Explorer instead? So it actually prompts you to go and do this. And if you do have internal sites and applications, you can ask your network guys to go and configure this for you. So if things like ActiveX support is important to you, then you still have this option with Internet Explorer on the machine. Now, Internet Explorer 11, it is largely equivalent to Edge at this point in time. There is differences. Edge supports some functionality, which IE doesn't, but that's only going to diverge as Edge develops. Edge is very much based on the good parts of IE. It owes a lot of debt to what was done in Internet Explorer previously. Also, the F12 tools have been very much improved. Although I had some issues demoing some of this stuff, I'm pretty sure these will get ironed out over time. And the tools, they feel much nicer to use. They're as good as some of the other browsers. Now, one item I haven't talked about is something called WebDriver support. Now, Stefano is at the front there. He's actually running a workshop on this on Friday. So if this is an area you want to know more about, go to Stefano's workshop and he'll be driving into a lot of detail with this. I'm going to flick over to my demo. So what WebDriver enables you to do is basically automate what's going on in the browser. And this is great for sort of integration testing scenarios. Now, previously there was a WebDriver version available for Internet Explorer, but it was actually community maintained. So some guy in his spare time was basically working on this and finding hidden APIs in order to maintain this. So it wasn't the most reliable of things, especially when compared to some of the other browser drivers. Now, I've had problems running this, so we'll have to see what happens when I go and kick this off. But basically what you do is you download the Edge WebDriver server. The support for this is not enabled by default. It'd be a bad thing if there was a way of controlling the browser on the user's machine. So you need to download Edge WebDriver, and then you can code various tests in C# and I think also Java. I've used the Selenium bindings for this. If you search NuGet, you'll find some of these things, and I'll put this code up. So what this basically does is it will automate a couple of things on the web page. We'll attempt running it, but I have had some problems with this, so I'm not sure how this will go. So run that up there. You can see Edge. And it's gone and added a product to the basket there. Just because we can, I think I'll go and click the Create Kittens buttons there. And you could use this to automate some tests for your web pages and applications and check that they run well. So that's really great to have a Microsoft supported WebDriver for Edge. So if this is of interest, please check out my course. I'll have the slides and demos available on my site at simpleisbest.co.uk. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and I'll take any questions that you guys may have. Thank you. Is there any-